Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia and today I have a special kind of haul. The title was a little bit clickbaity. I didn't actually steal these books. They're not really purloined. They are acquired. They are inherited, so to speak. The books in this haul are from my mother's library, and she had an extensive personal library that is all over the house in gazillions of bookcases, all over the place, and in piles and stacks and on tables and in bags and in closets, and it's everywhere. So the love of books and reading, actually, I know it goes back to my grandmother. Went down to her and she passed it to me. Guess what also passed to me? The job of sorting through all of these books and deciding who should have them or which ones we should donate back to the library book sale, of which ones I might want to keep for my personal library. And I've been enjoying some videos recently, a very similar theme of video made by Debs of Rainer Reads, who has been collecting some books from her father's library and sharing them. And I think they're called Confessions of a Shameless Book Stealer, or if that's wrong, I'll put a correction up there. We're not really stealing them. We're just relocating them to another branch of the family. And I want to share with you some books today that I mailed home to myself from my mother's house that I am so glad to add to my personal library. I forgot to say I will put a link to Deb's videos too, and check out her channel because she is a wonderful booktuber, really funny, really smart, reads an incredible array of books. She has millions of projects going at the same time, like just big reading energy. So check it out. But I'll put her, I think there's two of them about the books that she has found in her father's library that she has brought home. But here's the ones that I found. First of all, one thing that's not a book is this tote bag from the Library of Congress. I gave this to my mom as a gift quite a while ago. It's like 10 or 15 years ago. And I know that she used it as a library book bag. And I think when she was a frequent hitter of library book sales, but she took wonderful care of it. And so I brought it home because it just has a lot of good memories for me. She really loved it. And I'm just going to keep it going in her honor. Okay, and here's the books. The first one is by William Maxwell. They Came Like Swallows. I have several books by William Maxwell already on my shelves, and I've read most of them, but it's been a really long time. He's one of the authors that I kind of have on this reread backlist kind of thing where I want to get to them and try them out again, but I've heard that this book's really excellent. It was his second novel. It came out in 1937. William Maxwell was an American author, and his range of short stories and novels came out between the 30s all the way up to about 70s or 80s. I think the ones that I've read are some of the older ones from the 30s and 40s. But this one is semi-autobiographical. It's rather thin, and it is about a family that is deeply affected by the Spanish flu in 1918. And I think it's really sad. I've heard it's really good. I think that it was inspired by the fact that in his childhood, his mother did die during the Spanish influenza epidemic. So happy vibes here. I think this would be a great selection for Shorty September, Misery May, or if you want a sad book. It's just a beautiful edition of this book that I have never read. The next one is an omnibus of John Steinbeck, and it is the short novels of John Steinbeck. And you can see here on the front which novels that they are. And I have a very dilapidated copy of Mice and Men, and then I have a few of the longer novels already on the shelf. They're all like very old vintage copies. I guess I got them at library book sales a long time ago. And this one is also pretty old. This is a 1962 edition. I've been wanting to read Cannery Row. The others I have read, I feel like maybe, well, I've read Of Mice and Men a number of times. I've never read Tortilla Flat or The Moon is Down. I think I read The Red Pony and the Pearl 1,000 years ago in school. So now I can release that crumbling copy of Mice and Men. It's hard to say of 2 times in a row. And replace it with this nicer volume. Not long ago, I talked about Apple of My Eye by Helene Hanff. This was a book that I did pull off the shelves and bring home with me on the plane from my trip to South Carolina. It was I wanted something light, something funny, something not taxing on my brain or my soul, and this was perfect. And I also found 2 others, and I found this copy of 84 Charing Cross Road, which is a book that my mother and I talked about a number of times, that we both really enjoyed and had read multiple times. This copy is it's got a little bit of damage going. It's kind of chipping or peeling in the corners. So I might have to do a little librarian magic on it. It looks like she got it for $2 at some library sale, but it says it's a deluxe gift edition, and it appears to be a 1975 printing. It's a classic epistolary nonfiction book about Helene's correspondence with a bookstore in London from the 1940s to the 1960s. And she was a young writer living in New York City on a very limited budget, but she spent every extra dime she had on books. This is well before the internet, and so she corresponds to these booksellers in England about the books that she is looking for, and a friendship grows through their letters that it goes far beyond the original commerce. And even though she admits that living in New York City, she could probably hit the streets and find lots of excellent used bookstores in her city to do business with, she prefers to sit in the comfort of her apartment and write to this bookstore in England. And the benefit is we have this charming book for all time to enjoy. Then she wrote a follow-up years later called The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street, about when she finally got to travel to England. And it's her travel memoir of that adventure. And then, of course, the one that I read most recently is about her escapades in New York City in the 70s with her friend Patsy while they're trying to research tourist sites for a book that she's been contracted to write. It's like a tourist book of photos, and she's supposed to write the print. And she realizes that even though she's lived in New York for decades, she didn't really know very much about the most popular tourist attractions. So she and her friend, another lifelong New Yorker, go on these adventures around the city, learning things that they never knew before, and deciding what was most important to put in the book for these visitors to New York. And it's really funny. So now I have a little Helene Hanff. I don't know. Okay, it's spelled Helene, but I've heard people say Helen, so I'm really not sure. But anyway, whoops. I have a little section for her now in my newly renovated, well, not renovated, but newly rearranged personal library. If I was going to renovate, the first thing I do is paint these dark walls in here and brighten the place up. And there's nothing really stopping me from that but my own laziness. But that's another topic. Let's get back, let's focus. The next book is one that I surprisingly did not have in our home library, and that is Animal Farm by George Orwell. This is a folio edition copy with illustrations by Quentin Blake. And this is from 1984, but it looks very pristine. I was trying to think about whether I actually have ever read Animal Farm, or I just feel like I've read it through collective knowledge about it. And I kind of think maybe I never read it. I've read 1984 multiple times, and I'm in the market. I'm trying to find a decent copy of Down and Out in Paris and London, as I have a really ratty copy that I can't even reread because it's going to disintegrate. And we have some nicer volumes of some of the novels, including 1984, that I bought for Stephen last year, because he kind of went on this beginnings of an Orwell reading project, but we didn't have Animal Farm, but now we do. And I guess I should read it because I think I didn't, or at least I don't remember. I mean, I know what it's about. I know what the themes are. I know why it's important, but did I read it? I'm really not sure. But here it is, so nothing to stop me. The next one is a replacement volume, and it is Moon Tiger by Penelope Lively. And I know that I read this back when it was a newer book. I have a 1980s paperback of it over on the shelf. It has that, you know, that very classic vintage 1980s look. Hold on, I'll get it. You know, when all the books look like this. I think we talked about this on another video. And so this is the copy that I got back in the day, read it. I don't remember it now, but I know that I read it and really enjoyed it. And I do want to read it again. And so now this is a first edition. It must be the first American edition because it says winner of the Booker Prize. So unless the publisher was psychic, I think they mean first US edition. I have read and loved many books by Penelope Lively, so I'm really happy to have this copy of Moon Tiger, and it still has some really excellent 80s vibes. And while we're on the topic of Penelope's, I also have a book by Penelope Fitzgerald. I think I talked about in a recent video that this was an author that I had on my list of authors I've never read and have been intending to read, and this is her Booker Prize winning book, Offshore, from 1979. And so this, I think this must be as good a place as any to start. Spotted it there on the shelves. It is pretty thin. Let's see. 141 pages. Shorty September will be here before we know it. Kind of a bounty of shorties in this particular haul. But Offshore, what is it about? Kirkus said it was a small and very bright treasure. On the Battersea reach of the Thames, a mixed bag of the slightly disreputable, the temporarily lost, and the patently eccentric live on houseboats, rising and falling with the great river's tides. Belonging to neither land nor sea, they belong to one another in a motley yet kindly society. Okay, then it goes on and describes a bunch of the people. So it sounds like a found family story about a bunch of kind of unconventional people that live on houseboats. That sounds pretty good to me. So if you've read this book, let me know if you liked it. The next one is another replacement volume, and it is Last Orders by Graham Swift, another Booker winner. And again, I have an old paperback copy. And again, it's a book that I have thought about rereading. And this copy, I mean, it's like not even cracked. All right, Graham Swift, his fifth novel. A subtle yet deeply felt exploration of the ways in which friendship and love are shaped by the past and by fate. Okay, I know I remember that it's about these men that are gathering in a pub, and they're older, and it's a group of friends, but one of them has died, and I think they're on a trip. They're going to go scatter his ashes. And then they have this conversation. I mean, I think that the whole book is the men and their conversations and memories while they sit in this pub, if memory serves me correctly. It sounds like a good character novel. It helps when you have almost no recollection of a book except kind of a aura of positive associations. All right, the next one I'm going to confess, I actually gave this to my mom, but it has bounced back to me, and it is Love and Saffron by Kim Fay. I sent this to her a couple years ago, and at the time I made a note to myself that I too wanted to read it, but then I never did. I never picked it up or came across it. I kind of forgot about it, but I've heard people talk about it on Booktube, and it sounded really good. I think it's epistolary, yes. And Two Strangers, One Recipe of Friendship for the Ages. So there's two women who become friends through letters. It says young Joan is just discovering herself as a food writer in bustling Los Angeles, while experienced columnist Imogen is settled into her decades-long marriage on Camino Island outside Seattle. When Joan sends a fan letter to Imogen with an enclosed packet of saffron and a recipe, their journey of culinary exploration, soul-deep friendship, and personal transformation begins. You know, I recently read a book about two women who get to know each other over a food Journey. That was Taiwan Travelogue. Different time, place, setting, circumstances, everything, but there was two women and a bunch of food, so that just popped into my mind. Witty, tender, and wise, Love and Saffron shows how human connection is the only thing that matters and the most powerful antidote to troubled times. That sounds like something that could really come in handy to read sometime this year. Yeah, I'm peeking in the back and seeing that it has recipes. Maybe they're all the way through. I don't know. Anyway, this sounds really good. Sounds like fun. Although I feel like I heard in a review that it's sad. So we'll see what happens. Now we have kind of a curio. It is Jane Austen's The History of England. This is one of her juvenile pieces of writing. When she was a teenager and she wrote a history of England that's rather short, but this is a facsimile edition. So there's some notes and essays. There's something by A.S. Byatt here in the front. And then there's facsimiles of the writing and the little illustrations that Jane, the teenager, made. And then at the end, there's the regular print. I do have this History of England in another book of Jane Austen's Juvenilia, but I didn't have this fun facsimile where you can see all of her crossouts and her doodles. So I think this would be really fun, and I'm saving it for July. And then this was sort of an unusual find because my mom's not really a fantasy and science fiction reader, but I found this illustrated Hobbit. And I'm wondering if this is, I don't know if this is the edition when Maurice Sendak submitted pictures. I think that was an earlier time. The infamous time when Maurice Sendak wanted to illustrate The Hobbit and was rejected. Here's Bilbo talking to Gollum. The pictures are kind of dark in tone. I'm going to have to think how I feel about this artwork here. But it was too good to pass up. I wanted to spend some more time with it. And it is one of my favorite books and an outlier for me. I don't read a ton of fantasy, but I love this book, and I did reread it. Was it last year or the year before? And I intended to go on and reread The Lord of the Rings, the 3 books, but I have yet to do that. But I just thought this was a handsome volume. Now we're going to wrap this up with a look at 2 cookbooks. And I looked through a couple of big tall stacks of absolutely gorgeous cookbooks, but I picked out just 2 that I knew I would actually use them. So cookbooks are very hazardous. It's so easy to buy cookbooks that are just beautiful photographs and really appealing, and you have great ambitions, and then you never use that cookbook. So I try to be really careful now. At one point, I weeded out a bunch of cookbooks that I never used, and now I really try to be selective about why I'm purchasing a cookbook. So the same thing holds true even if I'm just bringing one home that I didn't purchase. So the first one is Vegan Express, and I have several other books by Nava Atlas, and she does kind of specialize in really simple, tasty, healthy recipes. I just picked out a couple of things that I knew I would actually probably make. I mean, there's not that many photos or anything, but I'm just really comfortable with her recipes, so I knew that one would work out. And then the other one is one that I have eyeballed many times at the bookstore because it's by another favorite cookbook author, and it's Veganomicon, the ultimate vegan cookbook. And Chandra Moskowitz is the author of my favorite cookbook, my favorite vegan cookbook that I use the most, and then Terry Hope Romero. The 2 have collaborated. I also have several of their small books that are about cookies and pie, and I think there's one on cupcakes. But I haven't had too many duds following the recipes of Moskowitz, and she's really funny too. This is kind of an overall cooking guide. So I do have the famous, I can't think of the name of it now, but I'll put a picture of it up here. The famous Vegetarian Guide to Cooking, and I do still use that for general information, but this one's specifically vegan. And I mean, I'm ready right now for potato kale enchiladas. I still like print cookbooks. I do use online recipes pretty often when I want to make something specific or I need to know about a certain technique and I just need to do it fast. But I don't really, it's not my favorite format because I don't like scrolling up and down and going through the big narrative about all the things that they had to go through before they figured out the recipe. And I just want the recipe. And if I want to read the reading part of it, I don't know. I don't like to read that way recipes. I like to have it and not have to search again and try to remember what website I found it on, but I know what book it's in if it's in a book. And I have this history of finding the books of this author unexpectedly. There's a whole history. Like all the ones that I have and cherish, there's a story about how I got that book. All right, so that is it. Let me know if you have any reading experiences with any of these books. And I am just very happy to have them in my collection. And it's another way to enjoy good memories about my mother whenever I read these books or even just look at them on the shelves. I hope that you are having an excellent week and you are reading something good. I will be back soon. So have a great day. Bye-bye.